Okay, let's try a little thought experiment. It's a bit grim, I'll admit, but it's also absolutely fascinating. What if our most essential, almost invisible utility, electricity, just vanished?
And I don't mean just a regular blackout, for a couple of hours or even a few days. No, no. What if the entire global grid went down and it wasn't coming back, like at all?
Just picture it. You're at home, kicking back, maybe watching something on your screen. And then, poof, it just dies. The familiar hum of the refrigerator, gone. Those little blinking lights on your Wi-Fi router, completely dark. All of a sudden, there's this silence, and it just feels wrong.
So, this is where it all begins. It's that first stage, that initial shock, where you start to see the fabric of our modern world just begin to unravel, one little convenience at a time.
So what do? You instinctively grab your phone, right? But there's no signal, no mobile data. The cell towers are down. You look outside, and it's chaos. All the traffic lights are out. You head back inside, try the tap, and not a single drop comes out. Why? Because the electric pumps that give us water pressure are silent. The dominoes, they're not just falling, they're toppling over fast. That quote really hits the nail on the head here. We've built our entire lives on this idea, this assumption of constant progress. But without electricity, that whole forward march just grinds to a halt. The future that we all kind of took for granted, it's just gone.
Okay, so things escalate and they escalate fast. We're now talking about the first 2 days. And this isn't just about being inconvenienced anymore. This is about survival. The choices you make in these first few critical hours, they're going to determine absolutely everything.
Think about how quickly it all breaks down. Within minutes, all communication is gone. Within a few hours, clean water stops flowing into our cities. By the end of the very first day, the smell of spoiling food is everywhere. And by day 2, even our last lines of defense, those emergency generators at hospitals, they start sputtering out and dying. In a scenario like this, you'd have to move and move fast. Securing water is priority number 1, no question. Then you've got food and light. But you know what might be the most important thing of all? Talking to the people around you, your neighbors. Your community suddenly becomes your most valuable, life-saving resource. All right, now let's zoom out a bit, because the problem gets way bigger. We're moving beyond individual households and looking at the total collapse of all the complex systems that basically run our civilization. I mean, just think about it for a second. All that money you have in the bank, it's just digital data now, and you can't get to it. ATMs are useless. The supply chains that keep our stores stocked with food and goods, they've ground to a complete halt. Sanitation systems fail, which means disease starts to spread. The entire global economy, the whole thing built on electric-powered trade, it just vanishes overnight.
And this number right here, this really puts the scale of the challenge into perspective. Our civilization would basically be thrown back 150 years in terms of technology. But here's the kicker. We'd be facing that reality with a global population 20 times larger than it was back then. That's not just a problem, it's a survival crisis on a scale we have never seen before. So all that population pressure, it would trigger a massive, desperate migration. Cities, which used to be these buzzing centers of opportunity, would basically become death traps. No water, no food, no sanitation. So where would people go? Life would have to shift to rural areas, because that's where the most basic resources for survival, land and water, can still be found.
But, humanity is incredibly resilient. So out of the ashes of this collapse, a new world would eventually start to rise. A much, much simpler world, built on the foundations of our pre-electric past.
And think about all the things we absolutely consider necessities today. They'd become totally useless relics, almost overnight. Your refrigerator, a glorified metal box. Computers, phones, AC and heating, all the comforts we take for granted, just gone.
So what would take their place? Well, we'd have to dust off the toolbox of our great-great-grandparents. Hand pumps for water, manual drills, bicycles, even bullock carts for transport. All of that would suddenly be considered cutting-edge technology all over again. It's kind of wild to think about. With no cash and no digital currency, the economy just reverts to its oldest and simplest form, bartering. Your wealth wouldn't be measured in dollars or euros anymore. It would be measured in what you can actually hold in your hands, what you can do. Got a sheep, but you need a pig? Well, you better hope someone's willing to trade.
And this really drives home the dramatic shift in what's considered valuable. Think about it. All the skills of a software engineer, pretty much useless. But a farmer, a blacksmith, a carpenter, someone who knows herbal medicine, those people would become the most important members of society. Practical, hands-on knowledge would be the new gold. So stepping back from this whole thought experiment, it really forces us to look at our modern world and at that invisible force that powers absolutely everything with a whole new perspective. I mean, look at how we get our power today. It's a pretty complex mix of sources, right? Fossil fuels, renewables, nuclear. But here's the thing. All that diversity is delivered through one highly centralized, super interconnected grid. And as we've just seen, that interconnectedness is also its biggest weakness. One major failure can bring the whole house of cards down. Which, of course, raises a really interesting question. What if we built our grids differently? Could a future with smaller, more localized, self-sufficient power systems, decentralization, actually protect us from this kind of total catastrophic collapse? It's definitely something to think about. Okay, so everything we've talked about up to this point, that's all based on a grid failure. That's a collapse of human technology. But let's get a little wild here. Let's push this thought experiment to its absolute mind-bending limit. What if it wasn't our tech that failed, but the laws of physics themselves? Yeah, forget about power plants and transmission lines. What if electricity itself just stopped existing? What if that fundamental force, electromagnetism, just blinked out of the universe?
The consequences are, well, they're almost impossible to truly imagine. See, electromagnetism is basically the cosmic glue that holds atoms together. Without it, everything, and I mean everything, you, me, this entire planet, would just dissolve into a cloud of particles. And then gravity, with nothing to push against it, would just crush all that cosmic dust into a black hole. Even light itself would just stop being a thing.
So in the end, yeah, our dependence on the electrical grid is huge, no doubt about it. But our very existence, everything we are, is owed to that fundamental force of electricity. A world without it wouldn't just be dark, it would be empty. It wouldn't just be a reset for humanity, it would be a reset for the entire universe.